I collapsed on a construction site on a Thursday morning. My heart stopped twice before I made it to the hospital. But the worst part? Finding out my wife chose a spiritual retreat over my deathbed, and my 16-year-old daughter wasn't allowed to say goodbye. That's when I realized I'd spent my whole life designing dream homes for strangers while my own house was burning down. Welcome to the story of how I blueprinted my way out. My name is Marcus Reed. I'm 42 years old, and I've been an architect for nearly 20 years. On the morning everything changed, I was standing on the foundation of what was supposed to be my career masterpiece, a luxury coastal resort perched on the cliffs outside Portland, Oregon. I remember the exact moment it started. I was reviewing blueprints with Trevor, my site foreman, discussing load-bearing walls and how we'd reinforce the structure against Pacific storms. Ironic, considering what was about to happen to my own foundation. "Marcus, you okay?" Trevor had asked, squinting at me in that late September sunshine. "You look pale." I waved him off. "Chest pain. Probably stress." I'd been working 70-hour weeks for 3 months straight. Classic mid-40s guy stuff, right? Push through. Rest later. I didn't get a chance to rest later. Trevor said I dropped the blueprints first, then my clipboard. Then I went down like a building with its supports kicked out. He said I was conscious for maybe 10 seconds, long enough to say something that sounded like "call Natalie," and then I was gone. What I remember is different. I remember the sky tilting sideways. I remember Trevor's face filling my vision, his mouth moving but no sound coming out. Then nothing. The paramedics told me later that my heart stopped in the ambulance. First time, they brought me back with a defibrillator. The second time was in the emergency room at Oregon Health and Science University Hospital, where a team of people I'd never met literally restarted my heart while I was somewhere else entirely. I don't remember seeing any white lights or dead relatives. What I remember is a strange, weightless quiet, like being underwater but without the panic. And then a voice, sharp and commanding, cutting through the dark. "Stay with me, Marcus. Stay with me." Dr. Sarah Chen, cardiologist. She's the reason I'm here to tell this story. When I fully came to, I was in the ICU. Tubes everywhere. Machines beeping a rhythm that I distantly recognized as my own heartbeat. Dr. Chen was adjusting something on one of the machines. "Welcome back, Marcus," she said. "You've been out for 3 days. 3 days." Sunday afternoon, Dr. Chen confirmed. "You suffered a major cardiac event, a widowmaker. Blockage in your left anterior descending artery. You coded twice, once in the ambulance, once in the ER. We did emergency intervention. You're very lucky to be alive." Lucky. I nodded while she explained the rest. Stents, medication, recovery protocol. At least 2 weeks of monitoring. Absolutely zero stress. I looked around the room slowly. Flowers on the windowsill from the office. A balloon with a grilling spatula on it, Trevor's doing, because he knew my obsession with my Weber grill. What I didn't see was my wife. The chair next to my bed was empty. No jacket, no purse, no coffee cup, no sign anyone had been sitting vigil while I was busy dying and coming back. "My wife," I said. My voice scratched and strange. "Natalie. Has she?" Dr. Chen's face did something small and careful. "Your wife has been notified. She called this morning to check on your status." Called. Not visited. Called. "She's not here?" "She explained she's out of state," Dr. Chen said carefully. "She said she'd be in contact with you directly." Out of state. 3 days after I died twice, and my wife was out of state. I felt something crack inside me, small at first, like the initial fracture in a foundation that's been under too much pressure for too long. A nurse named Kelly brought me a charger and a hospital phone. She told me to keep calls short because I needed to conserve energy. Then she left me alone with the machines and the terrible, growing certainty that something was very wrong. I called Natalie. She answered on the 3rd ring. Background noise chanting. Maybe. Or some kind of rhythmic music. Then her voice. "Marcus." She said my name like a sigh. "Oh my God, baby, I've been so worried. How are you feeling?" I coded twice, Renee. My heart stopped twice. I know. Her voice broke a little. I know, baby. The hospital called. I've been so scared. Then come home. Silence. Not long. Maybe 3 seconds. But in those 3 seconds, I heard everything she wasn't saying. Marcus, I'm in Sedona, the retreat. You remember I told you about this. The 7-day intensive with the sisterhood. I'm right in the middle of a breakthrough. This is important. The sisterhood. The retreat. Words I'd heard her use over the past few months. Words I'd nodded along to while reviewing blueprints at the kitchen table. Renee. I said her name. The way you say it when you need someone to understand that what you're about to say is not a request. I almost died. I know that. Something shifted in her voice. Something harder. And you're stable now. You're okay. You have doctors. You have nurses. Baby, I've been planning this retreat for months. The deposit alone was $1,500. I'm in the middle of transformative work here, releasing old energy, finding clarity. I can't just... I'll be home Sunday. I'll be there the second we finish. I promise. It's only 5 more days. 5 more days. I died twice in 7 hours, and my wife needed 5 more days to find clarity in Sedona. Okay, I heard myself say. Okay. Okay? She sounded surprised. Maybe relieved. You understand? Yeah, I said quietly. I understand. Have a good retreat, Renee. I hung up, set the phone down on the white hospital blanket, and stared at it for a long time. The machines beeped. The fluorescent lights hummed. Dr. Chen came back in a few minutes later. She didn't say anything, but the look on her face told me she'd heard. Or maybe she'd seen this before. Maybe she knew what it looked like when someone woke up from dying and realized they'd been alone long before their heart stopped. She checked my vitals, adjusted my medication, told me to get some rest. After she left, I lay there in that ICU bed with tubes in my arms and a heart that had been shocked back to life, and I felt something I hadn't felt in the 11 years I'd been married to Natalie. Clarity. Not the kind she was looking for in Sedona. The kind that comes when you stop ignoring the cracks in your foundation and finally see the structure for what it is. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside me. At least something in that room was still working the way it should. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. But my brain kept circling back to one detail I couldn't shake. When I'd collapsed 3 days ago, Natalie had already been in Sedona. She'd known I was dying, and she'd stayed anyway. Trevor brought me a burger on day 2. Not hospital food, a real burger from the place on Burnside we used to hit after long sight days. He smuggled it in under his jacket and set it on my tray table with ceremonial care. You look like hell, he said, pulling up a chair. But at least you look like living hell, so that's progress. I managed a laugh. My first since waking up. It hurt my chest, but in a good way. Thanks for the balloon, I said, nodding toward the grilling spatula. Very on brand. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. Then his face changed. The easy humor drained away. Marcus, man, he started, then stopped. Harper's been trying to reach you. I looked up. Harper? My phone's been dead. She called me. Trevor showed me 3 missed calls from my daughter. She said she's been trying your cell. She's scared. She wants to see you. Something cold settled in my stomach. Natalie didn't bring her to visit? Trevor's expression was answer enough. Give me her number, I said. 5 minutes later, I called my daughter. She answered on the first ring. Dad? Her voice was small, tight. Hey, sweetheart. I'm here. I'm okay. Oh my God. The relief nearly broke me. Dad, I've been so scared. Mom said I couldn't visit. She said hospitals are traumatic for developing brains, and you needed rest, not drama. Harper, slow down. Where are you right now? In the bathroom. At home. I locked the door. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Dad, there's a man here. His name is Dylan. He came yesterday to pick up some of Mom's things. He has a key. He just walked in like he lives here. My newly repaired heart did something that made the monitors beep faster. What man? Dylan Chase. He said he and Mom are partners in the journey, and that she asked him to check on me while she's in Sedona. Partners in the journey. The phrase landed wrong. Harper, did your mom tell you that you couldn't come see me? A pause. Then quietly, she called the school on Thursday. Told them I wasn't authorized to leave campus for any reason. Dad, I tried. I really tried. I closed my eyes. Harper, listen to me. You did nothing wrong. Do you understand? Nothing. Mom keeps saying you're fine. You don't need visitors causing stress. But Dad, I heard someone talking in the background when you called her. A man's voice. And it wasn't Dylan, because Dylan was here. She took a shaky breath. Dad, I know something's wrong. Mom's been weird for months. She keeps talking about old energy and toxic structures. I think she means you. Toxic structures. The architect in me would have found that grimly funny if I wasn't busy processing the fact that my wife had blocked our daughter from seeing me in intensive care. We talked for another few minutes. I told Harper I loved her, that I'd figure this out. After she hung up, I sat there staring at the phone. Trevor had stopped pretending to look at the parking lot. You heard all that? I asked. Enough. There's a man in my house with a key. Natalie blocked Harper from seeing me. What do you need? Trevor asked. Simple question. No judgment. My laptop. From my home office. Tomorrow. He nodded. They moved me out of ICU on day 4. Regular cardiac floor. More privacy. More time to think. Trevor brought my laptop that afternoon. I told the nurses I needed to check work files. What I actually needed was to understand what the hell was happening to my life. I started with our joint bank account, the one Natalie handled, while I focused on project budgets. Recent transactions loaded slowly. Grocery store, gas, utilities, normal. Then, 3 months ago, a wire transfer for $85,000. I stared at the number, 85,000. The memo line said, SSR, investment, partnership opportunity. I searched SSR Sedona. First result. Sedona Soulrise Retreat Center. Flowing script. Red rocks. Meditation circles. People in expensive athleisure looking enlightened. In the About section, Dylan Chase, 45. Spiritual entrepreneur. Former corporate consultant turned wellness guide. I clicked investment opportunities. It was a pitch deck dressed in spiritual language. Different tiers. Bronze. Silver. Gold. Gold tier. $85,000. Benefits included equity stake, lifetime retreat access, advisory council position. I searched Oregon Business Registry. Type Soulrise. Soulrise Wellness Partners LLC. Registered 6 months ago. Members. Dylan Chase and Natalie Reed. Natalie Reed, my wife, had formed an LLC with a man I'd never heard of until my daughter whispered his name from a locked bathroom. I went back to our email account, searched for bank alerts from 3 months ago, found it in spam. Large transfer authorization request. Please confirm identity. Someone had accessed my email, used my saved password to authorize that transfer. Moved $85,000 without asking me. My phone buzzed. Text from Harper. A photo. A flyer, crumpled. Become a founding partner. Investment tier. Gold. $85,000. Below it. Found this in Mom's desk. I'm sorry, Dad. I texted back. Not your fault. I love you. Then I opened a new tab. Oregon Marital Property Law Fraud. I read for 2 hours. Learned words like misappropriation and fiduciary duty. Learned that Oregon law has opinions about spouses who use joint funds without consent. Learned that what Natalie had done had a name and consequences. By evening, I'd made 3 decisions. First, I needed a lawyer who understood fraud. Second, I wouldn't confront Natalie until I had every detail documented and every asset secured. Third, I wasn't the one whose foundation was crumbling. I'd just been standing on someone else's faulty structure for 11 years. Trevor came by that night with coffee. I showed him what I'd found. He whistled low. Marcus, what are you going to do? I closed the laptop. Felt something settle inside me that had nothing to do with my repaired heart and everything to do with finally seeing clearly. I'm going to build an exit strategy, I said. That's what I do. I'm an architect. Trevor smiled. Not a happy smile. The smile of someone watching his friend stop being a victim. She picked the wrong guy to underestimate, he said. I thought about Natalie and Sedona finding clarity. About Dylan Chase with his red rocks and LLCs and key to my house. About $85,000 and locked bathrooms and a daughter blocked from saying goodbye. Yeah, I said quietly. She really did. The lawyer's name was James Whitmore. I got his contact from a colleague who'd gone through a messy divorce and came out the other side with his sanity intact. I called him from the hospital on day 5. Told him I needed someone who understood asset protection and marital fraud. He didn't ask questions over the phone. Just said he had an opening the following week and to bring documentation. How much documentation? He asked. $85,000 worth, I said. There was a pause. I'll clear my afternoon. Dr. Chen discharged me on day 7. Sunday. Same day Natalie was scheduled to return from Sedona. 7 days I'd spent dying and recovering while my wife found clarity in the desert. Natalie picked me up at noon. Harper was in the back seat. And the moment I saw my daughter's face, I understood what relief looked like. She reached forward and squeezed my shoulder. I covered her hand with mine. Natalie wouldn't stop talking. Baby, you look so much better. The retreat was incredible, truly transformative. I released so much old energy. I have so much clarity now about what we need to shift. She was wearing mala beads, had a small lotus tattoo on her wrist I'd never seen before. Her perfume was different. Everything about her felt like someone had taken my wife and replaced her with a modified version. How was Sedona? I asked. Life-changing, Marcus. Dylan, the facilitator. He has this way of seeing straight through your conditioning. I learned so much about authentic partnership. In the rearview mirror, Harper looked like she wanted to roll out onto the highway. I'd love to hear more, I said carefully. Natalie squeezed my hand. I'm so glad you're open to this. Maybe your heart attack happened for a reason. The universe pushing us toward necessary change. The universe. Not a blocked artery. Not stress. The universe. Maybe, I said. Home looked the same but felt different. New artwork on the wall, abstract, lots of oranges and reds. The furniture had been rearranged. My coffee table was gone. Where's the table? I asked. Dylan thought it was blocking the natural pathway. Don't worry. It's in the garage. The flow is so much better now, Dylan thought. Dylan, who had a key to my house and opinions about my furniture. Natalie made dinner vegan now, she explained, and we ate roasted vegetables while she talked about crystal healing and toxic patterns we needed to release. You know what's interesting? She said. Dylan said that often when someone has a health crisis, it's because they're living in misalignment with their truth. Maybe your heart was trying to tell you something. I looked at my wife, saw the mala beads and new tattoo, and the gleam of someone who'd found the answer. Maybe, I said again. That night in bed, I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just cold, clear detachment, like looking at a building and finally seeing all the structural flaws. My phone buzzed. Trevor. You good? Define good. Alive. Not divorced yet. Then yes. Lawyer tomorrow? I glanced at Natalie, already asleep. A woman with a clear conscience, or excellent compartmentalization skills. Yes, I texted. James Whitmore's office was downtown, 19th floor. I told Natalie I had a follow-up with Dr. Chen. Not exactly a lie, I did have one scheduled. Just not until next week. James was exactly what you'd want in a lawyer handling high-conflict situations. 50s, gray suit, The kind of calm from having seen every variation of human mess. I laid it all out. Bank statements, LLC registration, email authorization, $85,000. Dylan Chase, the retreat center, Natalie's partnership. He listened without interrupting, making notes in impossibly neat handwriting. When I finished, he sat back. This is textbook marital asset misappropriation. You have grounds for a fraud claim, separate from divorce. I want a divorce, I assumed. He pulled out fresh paper. Oregon is equitable distribution, which means assets get divided fairly, not necessarily equally. But fair doesn't mean she gets to steal $85,000 and walk away clean. He outlined the strategy. Document everything. Secure assets. Open separate account. Protect retirement. The house in my name, from before marriage, was already protected. How long? I asked. 2, maybe 3 weeks, to get everything in place. Then we file. But Marcus, don't confront her yet. Don't let her know you know. Can you do that? I thought about Dylan with his key and furniture opinions. About Harper whispering from locked bathrooms. I'm an architect, I said. I can blueprint anything, including an exit. James almost smiled. Good. Because what we're building needs to be airtight. No mistakes. No emotional outbursts. Just clean, precise execution. That's the only way I know how to build. When I got home, Natalie was on the back deck doing yoga. Harper was in her room. The house smelled like sage and sandalwood. I went to my office, closed the door, opened my laptop, and created a folder labeled Project Exit. Started documenting everything, every transaction, every email, every piece of evidence. I'd spent 20 years designing buildings that would last. Now I was designing something else. Not a structure to live in, a structure to walk away from, with precision, with patience, with the certainty that I deserved a foundation built on truth instead of spiritual platitudes and embezzled funds. Outside, I could hear Natalie moving through the house, humming. She had no idea what I was building, but she would. In architecture, load-bearing walls are the ones holding everything up. Remove them without proper support, and the whole structure collapses. I'd spent 3 weeks identifying which walls in my life were actually load-bearing. Turned out my wife wasn't one of them. Doctor's orders said I should work from home for at least a month. Reduced stress. Light duties. What they didn't know was that I was using that time to conduct the most thorough structural inspection of my life. Natalie was increasingly absent. Teaching yoga classes. Meeting with Dylan about expansion opportunities. Running errands that took hours. She'd come home smelling like sage and talking about energy work, and I'd nod and ask interested questions while mentally cataloging every detail for James. Week 3, I found her journal. She'd left it on the kitchen counter, just sitting there next to her green smoothie and car keys. The old Marcus would have respected her privacy. The new Marcus, the one who'd died twice and woken up to an empty chair, picked it up and read it. The entries went back months. Before Sedona. Before my heart attack. Page after page. About Dylan. About falling in love. About how Marcus represents the old paradigm. About toxic structures, and she definitely meant me. About how Harper would understand eventually once the divorce was finalized and they could expand the center together. Once the divorce was finalized. Like it was already decided. Like I'd never get a say. I took photos of every page with my phone. Legal evidence. Then I put the journal back exactly where I'd found it, picked up my coffee, and went to my office to add the photos to the Project Exit folder. My hands were steady the whole time. That afternoon, I texted Harper. Coffee? Just us? She met me at the place near her school. Slid into the booth across from me, looking tired and guarded, and older than 16. How are you holding up? I asked. She shrugged. Mom's basically never home. When she is, she's either on the phone with Dylan or talking about him. It's like living with a stranger. Harper, we need to talk about something serious. She looked up. You're divorcing her. Not a question. A statement. Yes. Good, she said simply. When? Soon. A couple weeks. But Harper, there are decisions you'll need to make. About custody. Oregon law says kids your age get a voice in where they want to live. I want to live with you. No hesitation. No doubt. You'll still see your mom. Will I want to? The same question she'd asked from that locked bathroom 3 weeks ago. Only now she wasn't whispering. Dad. She blocked me from seeing you in the hospital. She chose some guy over you dying. She's basically moved him into our house without even asking how I feel about it. So, I'll see her because legally I probably have to. But I'm choosing you. I reached across the table. Took her hand. You know this might get complicated. I'm 16, not 6. I know what I'm choosing. She squeezed my fingers. You're the load-bearing wall, Dad. Mom's just drywall. Pretty, but not actually holding anything up. I almost laughed. Would have, if I wasn't too busy being proud of my daughter and heartbroken that she'd had to learn the difference. When did you get so smart? I asked. I've been watching you design buildings my whole life. I know how structures work. She pulled out her sketchbook, showed me a drawing she'd been working on. A house. Clean lines. Strong foundation. Architecture class project. Tiny house design. Professor said it's one of the best in the class. I looked at my daughter's work. Saw myself in every careful line. Saw the future architect she was going to be. It's perfect, I said. I learned from the best. She closed the sketchbook. So what's the plan? Over coffee, I told her. Not everything. She didn't need the details about fraud and asset protection, but enough. That I was filing for divorce. That James was handling it. That we'd have to do mediation. That she'd get to tell the court what she wanted. Will I have to see Dylan? She asked. Not if you don't want to. I don't. Then you won't. We talked for another hour. About college, she wanted to study architecture, maybe Portland State so she could stay close. About her mom, Harper admitted she was worried about her but also angry in a way she didn't quite know how to process. About the future. Are you scared? She asked as we were leaving. No, I said. And I meant it. I'm an architect. I know how to read a structure. This one was failing long before I noticed. Now I'm just being honest about it. Love you, Dad. Love you too, sweetheart. The next week was execution. James and I finalized everything. Separate bank account opened, my income redirected. Retirement accounts documented and protected. The house always in my name secured. Divorce filing prepared with fraud claim attached. Custody arrangement drafted with Harper's preferences clearly stated. We file Friday at 4, James said. Process server goes to the house Saturday morning at 10. Where will you be? Cannon Beach. Harper and I are doing a father-daughter weekend. James nodded approval. Good. Let her get served without an audience. Give her space to process. You'll need to be available by phone for when she calls. She'll call? Oh, she'll call. James's expression was almost sympathetic. Almost. They always do. Friday came with Oregon autumn rain, gray sky, honest weather. James texted at 4:15. Filed. It's done. I was home, packing bags for the coast. Harper was in her room doing the same. Natalie was at a chakra workshop and wouldn't be back until late. I stood in our bedroom, my bedroom, soon and looked around at 11 years of marriage. At the photos on the dresser. The wedding picture I'd need to take down eventually. The life I'd thought I was living. My phone buzzed. James. Process server briefed and ready. 10 a.m. tomorrow, she'll know everything. I texted Harper. Ready? Been ready for weeks, Dad. We loaded the car in the rain. Left a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to the coast for the weekend. Harper and I need some time together. Back Sunday. Natalie texted around 9. That's nice. You two deserve bonding time. Love you. I looked at those words. Love you. Wondered if she'd ever actually meant them, or if I'd just been convenient. A good house. A stable income. Someone to build the life she wanted while she figured out what she actually wanted. Harper came downstairs with her bag and sketchbook, looked at me loading the car. "You okay?" she asked. I thought about the question, about load-bearing walls and failing structures and the courage it takes to walk away from something you built with your own hands. "Yeah," I said. "I really am." We drove toward the coast through autumn rain. My phone sat silent in the cup holder. Tomorrow morning at 10, a stranger would knock on my door. My wife would answer, and the structure I'd been holding up alone for longer than I'd wanted to admit would finally, mercifully, be allowed to fall. Harper fell asleep, somewhere around the coastal range, her sketchbook open on her lap to that tiny house design. Strong foundation, clean lines, built to last. I glanced at her, then back at the road. Some foundations really are load-bearing. This one always had been. Cannon Beach in October is cold and perfect. Harper and I walked the shoreline Saturday morning while a process server walked up to our front door 2 hours away. The sky was gray. The Pacific was rougher than usual. Waves hitting Haystack Rock like they had something to prove. Harper collected shells and sea glass while I checked my phone. Once. Just once. Text from James at 10:17. Served. She's reading it now. I slipped the phone back in my pocket. Kept walking. "Was that him?" Harper asked. "Yeah. It's done." She nodded. Picked up another piece of sea glass. Green this time. Held it up to the light. "How long until she calls?" "I don't know. Could be minutes. Could be hours. What are you going to say?" I looked at my daughter. 16 years old, and already understanding that some conversations can't be rehearsed. That sometimes you just have to stand in the truth and see what happens. "Whatever needs to be said," I told her. We walked for another hour. Had breakfast at a small cafe overlooking the water. Harper ordered pancakes. I got coffee. I didn't drink. And eggs. I barely touched. My phone sat face down on the table between us. At 10:43, it started. First buzz. Text from Natalie. "What is this?" Second buzz. "Marcus, call me now." Third, fourth, fifth. By 11, there were 14 missed calls and 23 texts. I watched the notifications pile up like structural failures in a building I'd already evacuated. "This is a mistake, right? You can't do this. The house? You're taking the house? I need that money back. It's invested." Dylan says this is financial abuse. Harper watched the phone vibrate across the table. "Dylan says," she repeated. "Of course he does." At 11:15, I picked up the phone. Showed Harper the screen. "You okay if I answer this?" "It might get loud." "I want to hear it," she said. I took a breath. Hit dial. Put it on speaker. Natalie answered before the first ring finished. "Marcus, what the hell is this?" Her voice was shaking. Not with sadness. With rage. Pure, bright rage that someone had dared to disrupt her plans. "Divorce papers," I said calmly. I thought they were pretty self-explanatory. "You can't just... We need to talk about this. You can't just file for divorce without discussing it. Like we discussed the $85,000? Or Dylan?" Silence. 3 seconds of it. In those 3 seconds, I heard her entire strategy collapse. "Marcus, I can explain. I know everything, Natalie. The retreat center investment. The LLC. The partnership. Your journal entries about how I'm toxic structures and old paradigms. All of it. You read my journal?" Her voice went up an octave. Like privacy was the issue here. That's a violation. Using marital funds for personal investments without consent? That's called fraud. Ask Dylan's lawyer. This is vindictive. You're being vindictive because I chose to prioritize my growth. You chose a spiritual retreat over my deathbed, I said, still calm, still controlled. You blocked our daughter from seeing me in the ICU. You moved your boyfriend into our house. You stole $85,000. I'm not being vindictive, Natalie. I'm being an architect. I identified the structural damage. And I'm choosing not to live in a building that's already collapsing. What about Harper? She said, like she'd just remembered she had a daughter. Harper reached across the table. I looked at her. She nodded. I handed her the phone. I'm right here, Mom. Harper. Baby. You don't understand. I'm not a baby. Harper's voice was steady. Stronger than I expected. And I understand fine. Dad had a heart attack, and you chose a retreat. You chose Dylan. You blocked me from seeing my own father in the hospital. So I'm choosing Dad. Harper, you don't know the complexity of adult relationships. I know enough. Harper looked at me as she spoke. I know who showed up, and I know who didn't. She handed the phone back. I could hear Natalie crying now. Real crying. The kind that comes when someone realizes they've miscalculated badly. Natalie, I said, and my voice was gentler than I expected. Not cruel, just done. My lawyer will contact you about mediation. You should get your own attorney. Don't use marital funds to pay for it. James is watching the accounts now. I can't believe you're doing this. Her voice was broken. Lost. I can't believe you already did. I hung up, set the phone down on the table. Harper was staring at me. Dad, your hands aren't even shaking. I looked down. She was right. Completely steady. I designed this moment for 3 weeks, I said. Every detail. Every contingency. It went exactly according to plan. That was. Harper searched for words. That was the most architect thing I've ever seen you do. I laughed. Couldn't help it. My daughter made me laugh at the exact moment I just ended my marriage, and somehow that felt exactly right. The phone rang again, and again, 16 more times over the next 2 hours. Dylan called twice. I didn't answer any of them, just turned the phone face down and ordered more coffee and watched the Pacific beat against Haystack Rock. You think she's okay? Harper asked eventually. Honestly, I don't know. But Harper, she made choices. Adult choices. Now she gets to live with adult consequences. Is that cold? No, I said. It's structural integrity. Sometimes you have to let things fall that can't be saved. We stayed at the beach through Sunday. Walked more. Talked more. Harper sketched the coastline in her notebook while I sat on driftwood and felt something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Peace. Simple, uncomplicated peace. Sunday afternoon, we packed up and drove home. Harper fell asleep again in the passenger seat, this time without the sketchbook. Just her head against the window, peaceful and safe. I drove through the coastal range thinking about foundations. About what holds up and what doesn't. About the courage it takes to walk away from something you built with your own hands when you finally see it was never going to stand. My phone buzzed one more time. Text from James. Prepare for aftershocks. But Marcus, you did good today. I glanced at Harper sleeping. Thought about the conversation she'd had with her mother. The strength it took for a 16-year-old to say I'm choosing Dad without hesitation or guilt. Yeah, I texted back. I really did. The house was quiet when we got home. Natalie's car wasn't in the driveway. I didn't know where she was, and I didn't ask. Harper went straight to her room. I went to my office, opened Project Exit, and added one final note. Saturday, October 21st. Structure demolished as planned. Foundation secure. Ready to rebuild. Then I closed the laptop and went to make dinner for my daughter. Some buildings can't be saved. Some foundations were never as solid as you thought. But some, the ones that really matter, turn out to be strong enough to hold up everything that comes next. Earthquakes don't end with the main shock. There are always aftershocks. Some small, some nearly as powerful as the original. Natalie's aftershocks lasted 3 weeks. The first mediation session was 6 days after service. Conference room on the 10th floor of a building downtown. Neutral territory. Natalie arrived with her attorney, Lisa Park, mid-40s, sharp suit, the kind of lawyer who knows when her client has a losing hand. Natalie looked smaller somehow. Thinner. The mala beads were gone. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying for days. Maybe she had been, James sat beside me with his perfectly organized folders. I had my own documentation. 3 months of bank records, LLC registration papers, photos of journal entries, email authorizations I never gave. Natalie tried emotion first. Marcus, we can fix this. We don't need to do this. I don't want to fix it, I said. Not cruel. Just final. I want to finalize it. Lisa Park glanced at her client, then at the stack of evidence James had just slid across the table. She spent 5 minutes reading. When she looked up, her expression said everything. Mrs. Reed, she said carefully, we need to discuss your position here. The financial discovery came out during that session. Dylan's Sedona Soulrise Retreat Center was deeply in debt. Turns out spiritual enlightenment doesn't pay the bills as well as he'd hoped. Natalie's $85,000, our $85,000, was essentially gone, absorbed into operating costs and Dylan's lifestyle. Lisa explained it gently. You may have grounds to sue Mr. Chase for the return of funds, but recovery is unlikely. Natalie's face went white. But he said it was an investment. Equity stake. Advisory position. In a company with negative net worth, Lisa said. I'm sorry. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered lying in that ICU bed alone, and the feeling passed. The next session, Natalie tried anger. Accused me of planning this while weak. Of manipulating Harper. Of being cold and calculating. James shut it down with the journal photos, her own words, her own plans for divorce that she'd written months before my heart attack. Your client planned this first, James said calmly. My client just executed better. Lisa advised her to settle. Oregon's equitable distribution meant Natalie would get some marital assets, but the fraud changed everything. The house was mine premarital property. The retirement accounts I'd contributed to for 20 years stayed mostly mine. She'd get a fair division of what remained, minus the $85,000 she'd stolen. It wasn't much. Custody was simpler. Harper was 16. Oregon listened to 16-year-olds. Primary residence with me. Alternate weekends with Natalie. Holidays negotiated. Standard arrangement. Harper told me privately she'd go when she felt ready. Not before. By week 8, it was done. Natalie signed. No trial. No public drama. Just a quiet dissolution of 11 years that had been failing longer than either of us had wanted to admit. I went back to work in week 7. Part-time at first. Trevor met me at the office with coffee and a grin. You look different, he said. Different how? Lighter. Like you're not carrying a building on your back anymore. Maybe I wasn't. I stood at my drafting table looking at blueprints for a new project, a community center, nothing fancy, and realized I was seeing it differently. Not just the structure, but the purpose. I used to design for perfection, I told Trevor. Now I'm designing for resilience. That's deeper than I expected before 9 in the morning, he said. But he was smiling. Harper was thriving. Her tiny house design won first place in her architecture class. She got early acceptance to Portland State's architecture program. Started talking about sustainable design and buildings that adapt instead of just standing still. You know what I learned from all this? She asked one night over dinner. What's that? Sometimes the best design is knowing when to start over. I looked at my daughter, 16 years old, and already wiser than I'd been at 40. Dylan and Natalie's relationship fell apart by week 9. I heard it through Harper, who heard it through a friend whose mom took yoga classes. Apparently, when the money dried up and the legal pressure mounted, Dylan's spiritual guidance evaporated pretty quickly. He moved back to California. Last anyone heard, he was selling supplements online and calling it wellness coaching. Natalie moved to a small apartment near the yoga studio where she taught. Harper visited twice. Said it was awkward but not terrible. That her mom was different. Quieter. Maybe actually dealing with reality for the first time in months. The divorce decree was finalized on a Tuesday in late November. James called with the news. It's done, Marcus. You're officially a free man. I sat in my office. My home office. In my house. With my daughter down the hall. and felt the weight of it. Not sadness, not victory, just closure. Thanks, James, for everything. You made it easy. Best documented case I've handled in years. He paused. How are you doing? Really? I'm good, I said, and meant it. 2 days later, I ran into Natalie at the coffee shop on Burnside. Pure accident. I was picking up an order, she was leaving with her own cup. We nearly collided at the door. Marcus. She said my name like an apology. Natalie. Awkward pause. She looked tired, older. The spiritual glow was gone, replaced by something more human, more real. Are you happy now? She asked. Not accusatory, just curious. I thought about it honestly, about Harper thriving, about sleeping without tension in my shoulders, about designing buildings that mattered instead of just impressed. I'm healing, I said. Are you? Her eyes filled with tears. I thought I was choosing freedom. Turns out I was just running. I hope you find what you're looking for, Natalie. I really do. She looked surprised, like she'd expected anger or bitterness. You mean that? Yeah, I do, and I did. She'd made mistakes. Terrible ones. But carrying anger about them would only hurt me. I'm sorry, she said quietly. For all of it, you deserved better. We both did, I said. Take care of yourself. I left her standing there. Walked to my car feeling lighter than I had in years. Not because of her apology, though that helped. Because I'd meant what I said. I didn't need her to suffer. I just needed to not be trapped in her choices anymore. That night, Harper asked if I was sad about seeing her mom. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I'm sad for who I thought she was. But I'm not sad about where we are now. Harper nodded. Went back to her homework, designing a community center for her advanced placement class. I watched her work, precise and focused, and thought about load-bearing walls, about what actually holds a structure up when everything else fails. Some foundations really are essential. This one always had been. 6 months after my heart stopped, I stood on another construction site. But this time, I wasn't collapsing. I was building. The project was a community wellness center on the east side of Portland. Pro bono work. The kind of building that actually helps people, instead of just impressing them. Trevor was foreman again. And we stood looking at the foundation, literally just poured concrete, but already you could see the structure it would become. You know what's different about this one? Trevor asked. What's that? You're smiling while you work. Haven't seen that in years. He was right. I was smiling. Actually enjoying the process instead of just pushing toward the next deadline. I wanted to build something that helps people heal, I said. Seemed appropriate. Dr. Chen cleared me fully that same week. Final cardiology appointment. She checked all the numbers, reviewed my stress test results, listened to my heart with that same focused expression she'd had when she brought me back. Your heart is strong, Marcus. Stronger than before in some ways. The scar tissue has stabilized beautifully. She sat back. You're one of my best recovery stories. Funny how that works, I said. She smiled. Knew exactly what I meant. How's everything else? The divorce, finalized? Months ago. And I'm good. Really good. She studied me for a moment, nodded. I believe you. You look better than any patient I've brought back to life. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. What I was doing was living. Actually living, instead of just maintaining. Harper got her official acceptance letter from Portland State the next week. Full letter, not just the early acceptance. She came running into my office, waving the envelope like a flag. Dad, I'm in. Full acceptance to the architecture program. I got up and hugged her. My daughter, 16 going on 17, about to study the same thing I'd spent my life doing. But she'd do it better, smarter, with the lesson I'd had to learn the hard way already built into her foundation. We went to dinner to celebrate. Her choice the Italian place she loved. Over pasta, she asked the question I'd been waiting for. Dad, are you lonely? I considered it honestly. Sometimes. But I'm not empty. There's a difference. You could date, you know. I'd be okay with it. I smiled. There had been coffee with Elena, the architect I'd met at a professional conference. Smart. Funny. No pressure. We'd talked about buildings and life, and what it meant to start over. Nothing serious yet. But possibility. I know I could. And maybe I will. But I'm not rushing anything. Good. Harper twirled pasta on her fork. But also don't wait forever. You're only 42. That's like ancient, but not dead. I laughed. Thanks for that nuanced assessment. I'm just saying you deserve to be happy. Like, actually happy. Not just okay. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I am happy, Harper. Right now. Right here. With you. Sappy, she said. But she was smiling. The weekend after her acceptance, we went back to Cannon Beach. Same spot where I'd answered Natalie's panicked calls 6 months earlier. Same gray sky. Same Pacific waves beating against Haystack Rock. Harper walked ahead, collecting sea glass while I stood on the sand, thinking about circles. How life brings you back to the same places, but you're different. The place hasn't changed. You have. She came back with a handful of smooth glass. Green and blue, and one perfect piece of white. What are you thinking about? She asked. Foundations. What holds up? What doesn't? And? I used to think marriage was supposed to be the foundation. Turns out you were. You and the truth. Harper looked at me for a long moment. Then she put the sea glass in my hand and closed my fingers around it. Build something with these. What? I don't know. Art? A window? Something that lets light through. She grinned. You're the architect. Figure it out. That night back home, I sat at my drafting table with the sea glass arranged in front of me. Drew a design. Not a building. A window panel. Abstract. The pieces arranged so light could pass through the gaps. Imperfect, but beautiful. Broken things made into something new. I texted a photo to Harper. How's this? She replied immediately. Perfect. For the new house? I looked at the design. Thought about the future. About the small place I'd been considering buying once this house sold. Something simpler. Less space. More intention. Yeah, I texted back. For the new house. My phone buzzed. Trevor. Drinks tomorrow? Group from the office wants to celebrate you being back. Then Elena. Coffee this week? I have a project I'd like your thoughts on. Then James. Checking in. You good? I looked at the messages. At the sea glass design on my paper. At Harper's bedroom light still on down the hall, because she was probably sketching building designs instead of sleeping. I typed back to all of them. Yes. To Trevor. Yes. Count me in. To Elena. Yes. Wednesday? To James. Yes. Better than good. Because I was. 6 months after dying and waking up to an empty chair and a marriage that was already over. I was better than good. I'd lost a wife who'd never really been a partner, but I'd gained myself back, and I'd kept the one thing that actually mattered, the foundation that had been holding everything up all along. I died on a Thursday morning 6 months ago. My heart stopped twice. But the worst part wasn't the pain or the fear. It was waking up to discover that the life I thought I'd built so carefully had cracks in every foundation. Here's what they don't tell you about near-death experiences. You don't come back enlightened. You come back aware. And awareness changes everything. My wife flew away while my heart stopped. She chose herself, her clarity, her journey. For a long time I thought that made her the villain. But the truth is simpler. She was just honest about what she wanted before I was honest about what I deserved. When I really woke up, I had a choice. Spend my life angry about what I'd lost, or take back what actually mattered. I chose my daughter. I chose integrity. I chose to rebuild, not with anger or revenge, but with precision, patience, and the certainty that I deserved a foundation built on truth. If you're listening to this, and your world feels like it's collapsing, know this. You're stronger than the structure that's failing. You are the architect of what comes next. Build something that lasts. Build something true. Build something yours. I'm Marcus Reed, and this is the story of how I learned the difference between surviving and actually living. If this story resonated with you, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, and tell me what would you rebuild if you could start over. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next one.